The night was cold, colder than the human had ever felt on this ruined world. He walked slowly through the broken streets, where the wind carried the smell of smoke and ashes. Every building stood like a dead giant, silent and empty. The stars above looked sharp and cruel, as if they were watching the last survivors from a distance. He thought he was alone here, the only one foolish enough to search the ruins at night. But then he heard it, a sound soft and trembling, like a whisper carried by the wind. He stopped, holding his breath, his hand moving to the small knife at his belt. The whisper came again, weak but full of pain. "Please." His heart tightened, and he followed the sound. Turning a corner, he saw them, two small figures sitting in the shadow of a collapsed wall. One was an alien girl, thin and fragile, her large eyes shining even in the dark. She held something in her arms, a smaller bundle, her little sister. The younger one looked sick, her skin pale and her breathing weak. The girl looked up at him, fear and hope mixing in her eyes. Her lips moved, but her voice was barely there. "Please, just a warm meal for my little sister," she whispered. Her voice was broken, yet every word struck the human like a blade. The human stood frozen, his mind racing. Aliens were supposed to be the enemy, weren't they? The war had destroyed everything, and their kind had taken as much from humans as humans had from them. But here, in front of him, there was no soldier, no enemy, only two starving children. He reached into his pack slowly, pulling out his last ration bar. It was not much, only enough for one person, maybe enough to keep himself alive for another day. But when he saw the way the little sister coughed weakly in the girl's arms, the decision was made. He knelt down and placed the food in front of them. The alien girl stared at the bar, her hands shaken. "Gee," she looked at her sister, then at the human, as if waiting for a trick. When he nodded, she carefully opened the ration and held it to her sister's lips. The younger one chewed slowly, and for the first time, a bit of color returned to her face. The girl's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from relief. She whispered again, this time stronger. "Thank you, human." Then she reached into a small pouch tied around her waist. From it, she pulled out a small glowing object, a toy. It was simple, shaped like a star, cracked on one side but still giving off a faint blue light. She held it out with both hands, her voice shaking. "I'll sell my toy to repay you, human," she said. Her little sister held onto her arm, whispering something only she could hear. The human looked at the toy confused. Why would a child give away something so precious for a single meal? Why did her voice sound like she carried a secret larger than her tiny body? And why did he suddenly feel that this small meeting, on this broken night, would change everything? The wind blew harder, carrying the sound of distant machines. The human turned his head, eyes narrowing. The ruins were not safe, and someone, or something, was hunting tonight. But still, he could not walk away. Not after seeing the fire of hope in the alien girl's eyes. The night grew darker, the silence heavier, and in that silence, a fragile bond had begun. A bond that might save them, or destroy them. Only the stars knew what would come next. The human watched as the younger sister finished the last bite of the ration bar. Her small face looked brighter now, though her body was still weak. The older girl smiled softly, a smile filled with both joy and sadness. She held her sister close, rocking her gently as if afraid she might vanish in the night. The human knelt on the cold ground, unsure of what to say. He had given away his last food, and now hunger would be his companion tomorrow. But strangely, he did not regret it. Something about these two alien children felt different. Something told him their lives mattered more than he yet understood. The older girl lifted her head, her glowing toy still in her hand. She pushed it forward again, her eyes wide and serious. "Take it," she whispered. "It is all I have, but I want to repay you, human." Her voice trembled, as if she believed her words carried great weight. The human shook his head slowly. "It's just food," he said quietly, though his voice was rough. The girl looked at him with confusion, her lips parting slightly. To her, a warm meal was more than food. It was hope. It was life. She pressed the toy against his palm anyway, as if refusing to let her debt remain unpaid. The object was small but warm. A faint blue glow moved across its cracked surface like flowing water. It was no ordinary toy, though it had the shape of one. The human could feel a strange hum inside it, like a heartbeat hidden in stone. He hesitated, then carefully pushed it back into her hands. "Keep it, little one," he said, his tone softer now. She blinked, surprised, and clutched it tightly against her chest. Her sister, half asleep, reached out and touched the toy, as if comforted by its glow. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the sound of the wind, but in that silence, trust was forming, slow and fragile. The human studied the girl, noticing the dirt on her face, the torn clothes, the trembling shoulders. She was young, far too young to carry the weight of another life, and yet she carried it without complaint. The girl lowered her gaze and whispered, "You are different, human." Her words were not sharp or angry, but soft, like the sound of falling ash. "Others would have left us to die," she said. The human felt a heavy stone press against his chest, because she was right. Most would have walked past. Most would have seen only an enemy, not children. Before he could answer, the little sister stirred. She opened her eyes, weak but full of light. Her voice was so faint it could barely be heard. "Is he safe?" she asked her sister. The older girl smiled gently, brushing her sister's hair back. "Yes," she whispered. "He gave us food. He is kind." The human turned his face away, ashamed of how her words made him feel. Kind. Was he kind or only guilty? Guilt for what his people had done, guilt for what he himself had done to survive, but her trust felt real, and he could not push it away. The air grew colder, the night pressing in. The human knew they could not stay here, not in the open. He stood and looked toward the ruins, shadows stretching long like hungry claws. "Come," he said firmly, though his voice carried no anger. "You cannot sleep here. It is not safe." The alien girl looked at him, hesitant. Her sister leaned against her, eyes closing again, too tired to stay awake. Slowly the girl nodded. She shifted her sister in her arms and stood, her small frame almost collapsing under the weight. The human stepped forward and offered to help. For a moment she froze, then allowed him to lift the smaller child into his arms. The warmth of the little one pressed against his chest, fragile and real. The girl followed close beside him, still clutching her glowing toy. Together, they walked deeper into the ruins. Adesbaum. Enemies, not as strangers, but as three souls bound by hunger, kindness, and something that none of them yet understood. Above them, the stars burned brighter. And far away, unseen machines stirred in the darkness. The meal had been shared, but it was only the beginning. The true danger had not yet shown its face. The ruins were silent except for the crunch of broken stone under their feet. The human carried the younger sister carefully, her small head resting against his chest. The older girl walked close, her eyes moving in every direction, always alert. Her hands clutched the glowing toy tightly, as if it were more important than her own life. The human noticed how she held it, not like a plaything, but like a treasure. Curiosity burned inside him, but he kept walking, knowing questions could wait until they were safe. Still, the soft glow lit their path like a weak lantern, guiding them through the shattered streets. It almost felt as if the toy itself wanted to lead them somewhere. At last, they found a broken wall that offered shelter from the wind. The human set the younger child down gently, wrapping his own thin coat around her. She stirred but did not wake, too exhausted even to dream. The older sister sat beside her, clutching the glowing toy against her heart. The human crouched nearby, his voice low. "That is no simple toy, is it?" he asked. The girl's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked ready to hide it. But then she lowered her gaze and whispered, "It belonged to our mother." Her fingers traced the cracked edge of the star-shaped object. "She gave it to me before she was gone." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "It keeps us safe. It keeps us warm when the cold comes, and sometimes it speaks to me." The human frowned, staring at the faint blue light moving across the surface like liquid fire. He reached out as if to touch it, but the girl pulled it back quickly. "Please," she whispered. "It is all we have left. Without it, we are nothing." The human raised his hands, slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I don't want to take it," he said. "I only wanted to understand." The girl studied his face, then nodded slowly. She held the toy up so that he could see it better. In the glow, the cracks seemed to shift, forming patterns that looked like words. The human realized then that this toy was no ordinary relic. It was technology, ancient or advanced, beyond his understanding. "Why did you try to give it to me earlier?" he asked. The girl's voice trembled, but her answer was clear. "Because you fed my sister, because you were kind. I wanted to repay you with what I had." Her eyes glistened with tears. "But I could never give it away. Not truly. It is part of us, part of who we are." The human felt a strange pull in his chest. This child was no warrior, no enemy, and yet she carried something that could shift the balance of everything. He looked at the toy again, wondering if others were searching for it, wondering if danger was closer than they knew. The wind howled outside the broken wall, carrying distant echoes of metal grinding against stone. The girl hugged the toy tightly and whispered something in her own alien tongue. The human could not understand the words, but the sound was soft, like a prayer. When she finished, she looked at him and said, "It remembers things. It remembers my people, their voices, their songs." The human shivered, though not from the cold. He had seen strange machines, weapons of war, but never something like this. The thought of such a treasure in the hands of the wrong people made his stomach twist. Yet here it was, held by a girl too young to bear its weight. The younger sister stirred again, her small hand reaching out. She touched the glowing toy with her weak fingers, and the light grew brighter for a moment. The human saw shapes in the glow, like stars forming constellations, like a map of the skies. And the light faded back to its soft hum, leaving only silence. The girl looked at him with wide, serious eyes. "You must promise," she whispered. "Never tell anyone you saw this. If they know, they will come, and they will never stop." Her voice shook with fear, but also with strength. The human nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her secret settle on his shoulders. The toy pulsed once more, as if agreeing with her words. The ruins outside were still, but the night felt heavy, and though they sat together in the shadows, the human knew this toy was more than a gift. It was a key, and someone out there was hunting for it. The night seemed calm, but calmness in the ruins never lasted long. The human leaned against the broken wall, trying to rest for a moment. The sisters huddled together, the toy glowing softly between them like a weak fire. For a short while, it almost felt safe. Almost. Then came the sound, faint at first, a low hum rolling through the ruins. The human's head snapped up, his ears straining. The girl froze, clutching her sister and the glowing toy tighter. The hum grew louder, joined by the metallic click of legs on stone. "Drones," the human muttered under his breath, his face turning hard. He had heard them before. Machines built to hunt survivors, human or alien. Once they locked onto a signal, they did not stop until their target was gone. The girl's eyes widened in fear. "They are searching. They always search," she whispered. The human stood quickly, scanning the shadows. Through the cracks in the wall, he saw the faint red glow of sensors sweeping the street. 3 drones moved in a slow pattern, their long, insect-like bodies crawling across the rubble. Their steel legs clattered against stone, echoing through the night like the sound of chains. The human crouched low, whispering urgently, "Stay quiet, stay low, and do not let that light touch you." The girl nodded, holding her sister so tightly it seemed she might vanish inside her arms. The toy pulsed once, as if reacting to the machines, its glow faint but alive. The drones moved closer, their red sensors cutting through the dark. The human's heart pounded, each beat louder than the last. He gripped his knife, though he knew it was useless against machines of steel and fire. All he could do was wait, hope the shadows hid them well enough. One drone stopped, its sensor beams sweeping across the broken wall. The girl pressed her hand against her mouth, holding back a cry. Her sister coughed weakly, the sound sharp in the silence. The human's blood ran cold. The drone turned sharply toward the sound, its legs clicking faster. The red beam cut across the wall, slicing through the shadows like a blade. The human grabbed the girl's arm and hissed, "Run!" No time for thinking, no time for fear, only movement. They bolted from the wall, the human lifting the younger sister into his arms again. The girl ran beside him, clutching the glowing toy against her chest. The drones shrieked, a metallic cry that echoed across the ruins. Their legs pounded against stone as they gave chase. The human's breath tore in his lungs, but he kept running, stumbling over rubble, dodging the jagged edges of collapsed buildings. The red beams swept past, burning holes into the ground. One beam grazed the human's shoulder, leaving a trail of smoke and pain. The girl screamed, but he shouted back, "Keep running!" They dashed through an alley where broken walls leaned against each other. The space was narrow, forcing them to squeeze through. The drones slammed against the stone, their metal bodies scraping as they forced their way after them. The toy glowed brighter, its hum rising. The girl looked at it in shock. "It knows we are in danger," she gasped. The human didn't answer, his mind focused only on escape. The light pulsed again, sending strange ripples through the air. Suddenly, one of the drones faltered, its red sensor flickering. It let out a harsh screech and collapsed against the rubble, sparks flying. The girl stared at the toy in disbelief. It hurt them. But the human knew there was no time to question. Two drones still chased, their beams cutting through the dark like knives. The human turned a sharp corner, leaping over broken stone. He pushed forward, lungs burning, legs screaming, but he did not stop. The children's lives were in his hands, and failure was not an option. Behind them, the ruins shook as the drones crawled closer. The girl clutched the toy tighter, whispering a prayer in her strange tongue. The human felt the pulse of the toy even from where he ran, like a second heartbeat. The chase had only begun, and already the night was alive with fire and fear. The night was alive with fear. The sound of the drones echoing like thunder behind them. The human pushed forward, his breath sharp, carrying the younger sister close. The older girl ran beside him, her small feet stumbling but never stopping, and in her hands the glowing toy pulsed brighter, its hum growing louder with every step. They dove into the shadow of a collapsed tower, stone and steel hiding them for a moment. The drones crawled past, their red sensors sweeping but not yet finding. The human pressed his back against the wall, chest rising and falling like a drum. The girl crouched low, holding the toy against her chest, as if it could protect them from the world. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the toy and the hiss of wind filled the silence. Then the human finally asked, his voice low but sharp, "That thing, what is it really?" The girl hesitated, her lips trembling, her eyes darting to her sleeping sister. "It is not a toy," she whispered at last, her fingers tracing the glowing cracks. "It looks like one, because that is how my people hide it, but inside, it remembers, it holds power." The human frowned, leaning closer. "Power for what?" he asked. The girl's voice shook, yet her words carried a strange strength. "It can wake the old machines. It can open doors long closed. It can call fire from the sky." She looked at him, her large eyes shining with fear. "My people said it is a key, one of the last left from before the war." The human stared at the faint blue glow, his mind racing. A key, something that could control lost technology, something people would kill for. "Why do you have it?" he asked, almost whispering. The girl's hands shook as she pulled the toy closer, pressing it against her chest. "My mother gave it to me. She said we must keep it safe, even if it meant running, even if it meant hiding." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "She said one day it would save us, save what is left of my people." She lowered her head, whispering, "But I don't even know how to use it. Sometimes it just acts on its own." The human remembered how the drone had collapsed when the toy pulsed. This was no accident. The key had protected them. But he also remembered the danger. If others knew the girl carried such a thing, every survivor, every soldier, every scavenger would hunt them until there was nowhere left to run. "You cannot tell anyone about this," the girl said suddenly, her voice fierce. "Promise me, human, promise me you will not speak of it." Her small hands trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. The human met her gaze and gave a slow nod. "I promise," he said simply. The toy pulsed once, as if approving of his words. The girl let out a long breath, her shoulders shaking with relief. She turned and looked at her sister, brushing her hair back gently. "She is all I have left," she whispered. "I cannot lose her too." The human looked at the fragile child sleeping in his arms. He thought of his own past, the people he had lost, the lives taken by war. He understood the weight she carried, too. Heavy for someone so small, and in that moment he made a choice. "You will not lose her," he said firmly, his voice low but strong. "As long as I breathe, no one will harm either of you." The girl blinked at him, surprised, then nodded slowly. For the first time, he saw a spark of trust in her eyes that was not built on fear, but on hope. But their moment of calm ended quickly. The distant hum of drones returned, sharper now, joined by heavier sounds. The human stiffened, listening. Those were not just drones anymore. Those were footsteps, human footsteps. The girl's eyes widened, and she clutched the toy again. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice shaking. The human rose to his feet, his jaw tightening. The secret was no longer safe in the dark, and soon, others would come to claim it. The night no longer belonged to silence. From the ruins beyond, the sharp echo of footsteps grew louder, mixed with the clatter of machines. The human stiffened, his grip tightening around the small child in his arms. The older girl pressed the glowing key to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. "They are coming," she whispered again, her voice trembling. The human scanned the shadows, searching for a path. The streets stretched like broken veins, narrow and jagged, leading deeper into the dead city. Every turn was danger. Every step could be a trap, but standing still meant death. "Stay close," the human ordered firmly. He moved quickly, slipping into the narrow alleys, the girl following right behind. The child stirred weakly against his chest, but he tightened his hold and kept running. The red glow of drones cut across the walls, chasing them like hunters in the night. Then came voices, human voices, carried by the cold wind. "Spread out, search the ruins, they can't be far," one shouted. The girl's eyes widened in terror. "They want the key," she whispered. "They will never stop." The human glanced back, his mind racing. He knew what greed did to people. If they found the toy, they would kill the girl. Elez without hesitation. He could not let that happen. Not now, not ever. They darted through broken passageways, their feet crunching on stone. The human's lungs burned, his body screamed for rest, but he forced himself forward. The girl's breath came fast, yet she did not complain. Her focus never left the toy in her hands, as if she knew its glow might betray them. A sharp beam of red light sliced across their path. The human cursed under his breath, pulling the girl into the shadow of a collapsed wall. A drone crawled past, its steel legs clicking like knives on stone. They held their breath, hearts pounding, waiting for the red glow to fade. But then a shout rang out from behind. "There, I saw them." The human's blood ran cold. Figures appeared on the broken street, armed survivors, their faces hard with hunger and greed. The chase erupted again. The human dashed forward, leaping over rubble. The girl scrambling close behind. Bullets cracked through the air, sparks flying as they struck stone. The child whimpered in his arms, but he held her tight, whispering, "Hold on, little one." The key pulsed violently, glowing brighter than before. The girl gasped, stumbling but never letting it go. "It feels them," she whispered. "It feels their hate." The light flickered, and for an instant the air itself seemed to shimmer. One of the drones collapsed suddenly, its sensor bursting in a flash of sparks. The human didn't stop to question, he only pushed harder. But the survivors were closing in, their voices cruel. "Give us the key and we might let you live," one shouted, laughter in his tone. The girl shook her head fiercely, her voice rising. "Never," she cried. "It is not yours." Her words echoed against the stone, filled with a strength far greater than her small frame. The human felt the same fire in his chest, a promise he had made to protect them no matter the cost. They reached a broken bridge, the path ahead cracked and unstable. The human looked down. The drop was steep, filled with jagged metal. Behind them, footsteps pounded closer, the glow of drones cutting the dark. Trapped, hunted, there was no safe choice left. The girl clutched the key, her voice breaking. "My mother said it would guide us when we had no way left." The human looked at her, at the fear and hope mixing in her eyes, and for a moment, he believed her. "Then trust it," he said firmly. The key pulsed, brighter and brighter, filling the night with blue light. The enemies shouted, covering their eyes, and in that instant, the human leapt, carrying the child, the girl following with the key held high. The ruins swallowed them, the world a blur of light and shadows. Behind them, the hunters roared in anger. The drones screamed in sparks. But ahead, the blue glow spread like a path through the darkness. The pursuit was not over. It had only begun. The fall from the broken bridge had not killed them, but it had shaken every bone in their bodies. They landed in the lower ruins, where shadows stretched long and the air was heavy with dust. The human groaned softly, rising to his feet while still holding the younger sister close. The older girl staggered up beside him, the glowing key still clutched tightly in her hands. For a while they walked in silence, moving through tunnels of broken steel and stone. Every sound echoed like thunder, and every flicker of light felt like a trap. But then, voices called out from ahead, soft and careful, not like the cruel shouts of hunters. "Hey, wait, don't run, we're not here to hurt you." The human stopped instantly, his knife sliding into his hand. From the shadows emerged three figures, survivors like him, dressed in torn clothes and carrying makeshift weapons. Their faces were rough, but their eyes looked almost kind. "You look half dead," one of them said, raising his hand slowly. Me with us. We have food. We have shelter." The girl's eyes lit with a flicker of hope. Her voice was quiet, almost too soft. Maybe they can help." The human frowned, suspicion burning in his chest, but he saw the way the girl trembled, the way her sister lay limp in his arms, and he knew they needed rest. The strangers led them through the ruins into a hidden chamber below the city. Torches lit the walls, and the air carried the smell of cooked food. For the first time in many nights, the children's stomachs growled with hunger. The girl looked at the human with pleading eyes, and he finally gave a slow nod. They sat on rough benches, the strangers offering bread and water. The younger sister ate weakly, her small face softening as warmth returned to her body. The girl smiled for the first time in days, her shoulders relaxing as if a heavy stone had lifted. The human, however, never set his knife down. "You've been running," one of the strangers said casually, his eyes sharp. "From what?" he asked, leaning forward. The human gave no answer, his gaze steady, but the girl shifted nervously, clutching the glowing key close. The man's eyes narrowed, fixed on the faint blue light seeping between her fingers. "That," he whispered, his voice changing, hard and greedy. The room grew heavy, the warmth turning to ice. The girl froze, realizing too late what they had walked into. Another stranger stepped forward, pulling out a crude spear. "Hand it over, child," he demanded, his voice like stone. "It does not belong to you. It belongs to whoever can use it." The girl shook her head, her arms tightening around the toy. The human rose slowly, placing the younger sister behind him. His knife glinted in the dim light, his eyes like fire. "You'll have to go through me," he said, his voice low and cold. The strangers laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. "Bert, you think you can stop us?" one sneered. "We've seen what that thing can do, and we want it. We'll take it one way or another." The girl's heart pounded, her breath short and fast. She whispered, "They tricked us. They were never here to help." The strangers moved closer, weapons raised. The human stepped forward, his knife steady, his body tense like a coiled spring. The girl clutched the key tighter, its glow pulsing stronger with every heartbeat. The younger sister whimpered softly, sensing the danger even in her half-sleep. Then the key reacted, its light flashing bright blue. The strangers froze, their eyes widening in shock. A hum filled the chamber, deep and powerful, as if the walls themselves were alive. The girl gasped, her hands trembling. "It's warning them," she whispered, but the strangers only grew bolder, their greed blinding them. "Give it now or we'll tear it from your hands," they shouted. The human's jaw tightened, his voice sharp like steel. "Try it," he growled. The torches flickered as the key pulsed again. The chamber filled with tension so thick it felt like a storm waiting to break. And in that moment, the girl realized something. The betrayal of strangers was only the beginning. Far worse hunters were still out there, and soon, they too would come. The chamber shook with the hum of the key, the stranger's eyes wide with fear and greed. The human stood like a wall, knife steady, ready to fight even though he was outnumbered. But before steel clashed, the girl clutched the key tightly and whispered something in her own tongue. The blue glow burst outward like a wave, and the torches flickered into darkness. Screams filled the room as the stranger stumbled back, blinded by the sudden flare. The human grabbed the girl's arm with one hand and lifted the younger sister with the other. "Move," he hissed, and together they fled through the smoke and shadows. Their footsteps echoed through tunnels until the angry voices faded into the distance. At last, they stopped. Breathless and trembling, in a place where the air was still. It was an old stairwell, broken but leading downward into forgotten depths. The human looked at the girl, his face sharp with both anger and respect. "They would have killed you for that thing," he said, his voice low. The girl's eyes lowered, shame heavy in her chest. I thought they wanted to help," she whispered. The human shook his head, his tone firm but not unkind. "Hope is a dangerous thing in a world like this. Never give it so easily." The girl held the key tighter, her small fingers pressing against the cracks. "It saved us again," she whispered, almost as if speaking to herself. The key pulsed softly, its glow calmer now, almost gentle. They followed the stairwell deeper, the walls damp with moisture and the air colder with each step. At the bottom, they found a heavy steel door half buried under rubble. The human pushed against it, straining until it groaned open. A rush of stale air escaped, carrying the scent of old dust and forgotten years. Inside was darkness, but not empty darkness. Rows of broken furniture, shattered screens, and collapsed ceilings filled the space. It had once been a shelter, a place for survivors of the war long ago. Now it was abandoned, a tomb of silence and shadows. The girl stepped inside cautiously, her toy casting faint blue light across the walls. She whispered, "It feels safe here." The human followed, lowering the younger sister onto a pile of cloth that had once been bedding. For the first time in days, she slept without coughing, her breathing slow and steady. The girl sat beside her sister, stroking her hair, her voice soft. She will be stronger tomorrow. The meal helped. The human leaned against the wall, his knife still in hand. His eyes scanned the room, but for once, there was no immediate threat. The silence grew heavy, but not with anger. This time, it was the silence of rest, of a fragile peace found in ruins. The girl looked at the key, its glow reflecting in her wide eyes. She spoke quietly, as if afraid to wake the walls. My people used to live in places like this, before the war, before everything was broken. The human studied her face, seeing the pain behind her words. You remember much? He asked. The girl shook her head slowly. Only what my mother told me. I was too young. But she said the key holds the memories. If someone can unlock them, the past will speak again. Her words sank into him like stones. Memories locked inside a glowing star. Knowledge lost, yet waiting. He wondered what secrets it carried, what dangers, what hopes, but he kept those thoughts to himself. Instead, he said, "Sleep. You need strength. Tomorrow will not be easier." The girl hesitated, then curled up beside her sister, clutching the key close. The human remained awake, watching over them. Every sound from above made his muscles tense, but the darkness around them stayed quiet. Hours passed, the ruins above alive with distant machines and hunters, but down here, in the hidden place, there was only breath and silence. For a little while they were safe, but both the human and the girl knew this peace was fragile, a candle flame in a storm, and storms never stayed far away for long. The hidden shelter was quiet, the air heavy with the dust of long-forgotten years. The younger sister slept soundly for the first time in many nights, her breathing steady. The girl curled close beside her, the glowing key clutched tightly in her hands. The human sat nearby, his back against the wall, eyes half closed but never fully resting. Hours passed like this, until at last the girl stirred. She sat up slowly, her gaze fixed on the soft blue glow of the key. The light pulsed gently, almost like it was alive. She whispered, "It is awake." Her voice filled with both wonder and fear. The human straightened, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean awake?" he asked. The girl looked down at the key, her fingers brushing over its cracked surface. "It listens to us. It feels when we are in danger, and sometimes it shows me things." The human leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. "What things?" The girl hesitated, glancing at her sleeping sister before answering. "Memories," she whispered. "Voices. Places I have never seen, but they feel real, as if the key is trying to remind me of something." Before the human could speak again, the key pulsed brighter. The glow spread across the walls, casting shifting patterns of blue light. Shapes appeared in the air, flickering like smoke. The human's breath caught in his throat, because they were not random shapes. They were stars. A map stretched before them, shining faintly, clusters of light forming constellations, paths between them glowing like rivers in the dark. The girl gasped softly, her wide eyes reflecting the stars. This is my people's sky," she whispered. "The places we came from, the places we lost." The human stared, his chest tight. He had seen maps before, maps of broken Earth, maps of ruined cities. But this was not Earth's map. This was bigger, greater, stretching across the heavens. "What does it mean?" he asked quietly. The girl shook her head, her voice trembling. "My mother said the key holds the path to our home, to the heart of our people. But she also said it carries something more, something dangerous, something others would kill to possess." She looked at the human, her eyes filled with fear. "She said the key can awaken the sleeping fire, the weapons of the old war." The human's stomach twisted. Weapons powerful enough to destroy worlds, hidden inside a child's treasure. His eyes hardened. "That is why they hunt you," he said, his voice low. The girl nodded slowly. "They belied. If they hold the key, they can rule what is left of the world, but they cannot. Only blood of my people can unlock it fully." The human felt the weight of her words settle like chains on his shoulders. He looked at the sleeping child, fragile and innocent, then at the older girl, too young to carry such a burden. And yet, she was carrying it because no one else could. The key pulsed again, the star map shifting, focusing on one bright point. The girl tilted her head, whispering, "It is showing me a place. Underground, far from here, where the last memory waits." The human frowned, suspicion in his voice. "Or a trap." The girl's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe. But if it is true, if the memory is real, then we will know how to protect it, how to protect her." She looked at her sister, her voice breaking. "I cannot run forever, human. I need to know what this really means." The human studied her face, the determination burning behind her fear. He knew the path ahead would be harder than anything they had faced, but he also knew he could not leave them now. "Then we go," he said simply. The girl blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly, clutching the key tighter. The star map flickered once more before fading, leaving only the faint glow of the toy. Silence filled the shelter again, heavy but alive with new purpose. The human looked at the sisters and thought of the promise he had made. He would see this through no matter the cost, because now he understood this was no ordinary toy. This was a secret that could change everything. The hidden shelter had given them rest, but rest could never last. The girl woke to the sound of footsteps above, heavy and sharp. The human was already standing, knife in hand, his face hard as stone. The younger sister stirred weakly, the glow of the key flickering against her pale skin. "They found us," the human muttered, his voice like gravel. The girl clutched the key close, her heart racing. "They will not stop until it is theirs," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The hum of drones filled the air, mixed with the cruel laughter of human hunters. The heavy door above shook as metal struck against it. Voices shouted, "Open it, or we burn you out." The girl trembled, but the human's jaw tightened. "We fight," he said firmly, no doubt in his voice. The door burst open, shadows flooding the shelter. Drones crawled down first, their red sensors slicing through the dark. Behind them came the hunters, armed with rusted rifles and jagged blades. Their eyes burned with hunger and greed as they saw the glow of the key. "There!" one shouted. "The toy! Grab it!" The girl held it tighter, shaking her head. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It is not yours." The hunters only laughed, their weapons raised. The human moved first, charging forward with a roar. His knife flashed in the dim light, striking against metal and flesh. A drone screeched as its sensor cracked under his blade, sparks flying, but another lunged at him, claws tearing into his arm. The girl cried out, her voice raw. The key pulsed, brighter than ever before. A wave of blue light spread through the shelter, slamming against the drones. Two collapsed instantly, their bodies twitching before falling silent. The hunters froze for a moment, their eyes wide in shock. Then their greed returned, fiercer than before. "Do you see that power?" one shouted. "It is ours. Kill them if you must." They rushed forward, weapons raised, their cries echoing like thunder. The human fought desperately, his body a wall between the girls and death. Every strike he made was fueled not by survival, but by the promise he had given. A blade grazed his side, blood spilling, but he did not fall. He roared again, slamming his knife into a hunter's chest. The girl crouched beside her sister, the key glowing hotter in her hands. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice rose above the chaos. "You will not take it," she screamed. The key answered her cry, bursting with light so strong it blinded the room. Images filled the air, stars, fire, voices of the past. The hunters stumbled, covering their faces, shouting in fear. The drones convulsed, their systems shorting out under the key's pulse. The girl felt the power burning in her hands, heavy and terrifying. The human turned, his eyes wide at the sight. The girl stood trembling, bathed in the glow. She whispered, "It remembers us. It fights with us." Her voice was not just a child's voice, it was the echo of her people. The hunters rallied, desperation stronger than fear. One leapt forward, reaching for the key, but before his hand touched it, the light flared again. A shockwave threw him across the chamber, his body crashing into stone. The room shook, rubble falling from the ceiling. The younger sister stirred, opening her eyes, whispering weakly, "Don't. Let go." The girl nodded fiercely, her arms tightening around the glowing key. The last of the drones screeched and fell, their red eyes darkening forever. The remaining hunters scrambled back, terror finally stronger than greed. "Devil's toy," one shouted. "Leave it. Leave them." They fled into the night, their screams fading into the ruins above. Silence returned, heavy and broken. The human leaned against the wall, blood dripping from his wounds, but his eyes were fixed on the girls, alive and safe. The glow of the key dimmed to a gentle hum, as if it too had survived the battle. The girl sank to her knees, tears streaming. She whispered to the human, her voice trembling, "You kept your promise." He gave a weak nod, breathing hard. "And so did you," he said. "You protected her. You protected all of us." The younger sister smiled faintly, her small hand reaching out. Her fingers brushed the key, and the glow warmed the room once more. The battle was over, but both the human and the girl knew the war was not. The key had shown its true strength, and the world would not ignore it. The battle was over, but the shelter was broken. Smoke drifted through cracks in the walls, and the air was thick with dust. The human leaned heavily against the stone, his breath ragged, his body cut and bruised. The sisters sat close together, the younger one still weak but smiling faintly. The key lay between them, glowing softly, no longer fierce, no longer wild. It hummed like a heartbeat, calm now, as if it too was resting after the storm. The girl held it in her lap, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the weight of what she had seen. She looked at the human, her eyes filled with something new, not just trust, but gratitude. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human shook his head slowly, his lips tightening. "No," he said softly. "We saved each other." His gaze shifted to the younger sister, her small face glowing in the faint light. The girl brushed her sister's hair back, her hand gentle. "She is alive because of you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. The human felt a heaviness in his chest, not from his wounds, but from the truth of her words. He had not meant to care, but now he did, deeply. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the key. Then the girl spoke again, her words slow, thoughtful. "My mother always said we must repay kindness, even if it costs us everything." She clutched the key tighter, her eyes never leaving the human's face. "One day, I will repay you, human, not with a toy, not with scraps, but with everything I have." The human's throat tightened at her words. He wanted to tell her no repayment was needed, but he knew she would not hear it. For her, promises were sacred, and this one came from the deepest part of her heart. He nodded slowly, his voice rough. "Then promise me this. Live. Protect her. Protect yourself. That is all the repayment I need." The girl's eyes shimmered, tears forming. She reached out with her small hand, resting it over his. "I promise," she said, her voice steady. "Vow." Above them, the ruins groaned, the world outside shifting with danger. The human listened to the distant echoes of machines and hunters regrouping. They were not safe here, not safe anywhere. But for now, they had time, a fragile moment carved out of chaos. The girl leaned against the wall, her sister curled beside her. Her eyes grew heavy, but before she closed them, she whispered softly, "One day, human, when the stars shine again for my people, you will not be forgotten. Your kindness will live with us." The human watched as she drifted into sleep, the key's glow reflecting against her face. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something like peace. The road ahead would be hard, perhaps impossible, but he would walk it because of them, because of the bond forged in hunger and fire. The younger sister stirred in her sleep, her small hand brushing against the key. The glow spread warmly through the room, wrapping them in light. The human closed his eyes, letting the warmth settle into his tired bones, and in that moment, he knew something had changed. He was no longer just a survivor, he was a protector, a guardian, bound by promise. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "One day I will repay you, human." The stars outside shone faintly through the cracks above, cold and distant. But here, in the ruins, warmth had returned. Not from fire, not from machines, but from trust, from promise, from hope. And hope, fragile as it was, would be enough to carry them into whatever came next.